Hello, nice to meet you, speak to you again. My name's Vic Gilgers, and what I'm going to talk about today, this brief talk, is about knowing. Is our inner intelligence, or is your inner intelligence. Not that we don't have intelligence from our intellect, that knows all sorts of things that they are learned, that we picked up along the way, but there is an intelligence that kind of is much broader than this, and is infinite, and how within that we can make use of what I would call knowings. We get to know things. You could call it intuition. You could call it, I don't know. You just get something taps you on the shoulder. You just kind of get with it. I would call it wisdom. And I'm talking about this not in preference to thinking, but vis-a-vis thinking. And what I mean by that is our thoughts. For example, thinking can be very dangerous. It can be very wonderful when we're thinking of our loved ones and wonderful memories, and even projecting into the future. That could be a wonderful holiday next year. So thinking is wonderful. That is the spice of life, that we have the gift of thought. But that gift can go, the opposite of that is that a lot of people just dwell on all sorts of miserable things because of things have happened to them, that they are set that way at the moment. That can be improved, and that's research. It can be improved. Our happiness levels can rise. But when we get into that kind of morass, and it's not always at the surface here. I was talking to a young lady the other day, and she said she couldn't sleep very well, and somebody else said, well, maybe that's because you're worrying. And she said, but I don't worry. And I would contend that. I would say, well, you don't think you worry, but at a kind of a subconscious level, you are very worried about a lot of things. And that's why thinking can be dangerous, is because when we dwell on upsetting thoughts, they become very solid and very real, and we go around in circles trying to solve the ways forward. So what I'm pointing to here is, what is the best way forward? Because there is a way forward. Lots of people have proven this. Lots of people have experienced a shift, and I would call it an inner shift from being not so good in life, but to actually enjoying life. So the benefit of moving away from thought is that so I'm pretending here that it helps if we're going to move away from thoughts that are upsetting us. Obviously, the benefit of moving away from thoughts, and in this sense, I mean, not all the time relating to thought, not relating like a lot of people, youngsters mainly, adults do it, scroll our phones. And therein lies what we think we need to do for the next thing, and the next thing, and the next thing. And what I'm saying here is that when we move away, not from that, I'm talking about thought here, just kind of stop that, be away from it, be refreshed, because all thought is stale. All thought is about the past. All thought is about what we know, what we've learned, and all the rest of it, and that can be a good thing. But the new stuff to be learned is not going to come from that realm, and it can do, but it's never very fresh. What is fresh is what comes to us in the moment, and that's what I call knowing. You just get to know. You get a feeling that that's the best way forward. You just know. It's like, well, I would say it's like falling in love. You just know when you've met the right person. You just know when you're in a beautiful place. You just know intuitively when someone is wrong, when the situation is wrong. A way I could explain, there's many ways I can explain this, but one way is, for example, what happens when, for me anyway, when I was a young man and I used to go jogging. Now at that time I was writing my PhD. I was doing a PhD, and what I did was I made sure that I devoted some time to what I call blue sky, kind of new thought, new ideas, and I had to get the question right first, what I wanted to solve, the problem I wanted to solve. I had to get that clear in my mind. What do I need to know? Not that what answers do I, what are coming through. No, what do I need answered here? And then what I used to do is I used to go for a jog in the countryside. I was lucky. It's built up now where I used to live, but I used to live in Beverley, Yorkshire, and I used to go jogging towards Beverley, and it was lovely. Even when it was raining, I used to do that. And pad, just listening to the pad, just looking at the nature, just enjoying the jog and sensing my body. But before I went for that jog, I set in my mind, what am I trying to solve here? What is the problem? And I was awaiting an answer. And I would say that most of the times an answer came. Not initially, maybe halfway through the jog. Sometimes the jog would finish and I'd finished. I got to my front door and I would say to myself, well, an idea hasn't popped into my mind that I wanted to. And it would do it. It would do it. It was foolproof. And I got to rely upon that. I got to trust it. That's a good word, trust. Faith. I got to have faith in that. And I don't know where that came from. It didn't come through sitting down seriously, banging my head on the desk and saying, what's the answer to this problem? So I'd like to expand on this. In other words, what I'm saying there is that something does come through. It can come through in dreams, it can come through in jogging, as I've just said, it can come through any time. But the main point here is that it's there. It can happen. Now, I'd like to introduce here, don't probably turn you off here. I used to be quite good at mathematics, and we know what equations are. That on the right-hand side of the equation equals on the left-hand side of the equation. And so an equation that I would say here to help as regards this talk is that knowing equals thinking. So if you get that in your mind, like written on the board, knowing equals sign thinking, then what you've got to see, or hope that you can see, is that thinking can be all sorts of things, all sorts of thoughts. And we have that ability to think, that's great. But within that, we have all the ability to think all sorts of thoughts. And on that, so that is on one side of the equation. Now I can put into the other side of the equation anything that equates to thinking. It could be good thoughts, bad thoughts, and as I say, a lot of people, because they dwell on bad stuff, that's the equation, that's their thinking, that is their life. They, I'll cut to the chase here. On the helpful side of this is that what can be our thoughts is knowing. Knowing what is the right thing to do. And there's a whole philosophical debate on right and wrong on this. But what I'm saying is for the individual, because I'm talking here about the individual, you'll know when it's right for you because it resonates. And that's the thing. It kind of, it just is. It just is okay. And like I did on the jog, when a knowing came into my mind and into my thought, that's how it happens. Now, what I'm saying is that when your mind is attuned to good stuff instead of bad stuff, it's more likely to come through. And what comes through is, if you are attuned to the good stuff, what will come through is some good stuff, some good knowing. The it just starts coming into my mind. What I'm saying here is that how it could come into our thoughts is coming into our thoughts through our subconscious. In other words, that knowing coming across from what I would call a space within. It's more spiritual, I suppose. It's just a place within, an intelligence within, the God within. You get to know, and it might not spell it out in words and what have you. It is just you get an idea of what to do, and that idea comes across into your mind. It may do explicitly in the term of, oh, that thought's popping into my head, but at that moment in time it may not happen like that. It may be just come through into your subconscious, which picks up on it. Now it picks up on it, and I mention this because you're looking in that direction. You're not looking in the direction of thoughts that maladjusted thoughts. It is coming from just being in a space of quietness, of peacefulness, which is there. And you can be in the middle of a busy city, busy road, busy conversation, but still within you is that quiet place. And it's like, I don't know, it's like being sat in a park where, for example, you're just at peace with yourself, and then I think that is your inner knowing settles with you like a butterfly might just settle upon you, and that's nice. When that happens, that's grace, and that is the knowing. That inner knowing, you just resonate with it, it helps you, and it's our inner intelligence making itself known into our thoughts. So I hope that's helpful. Rather brief today, maybe a bit woo-woo today, but it's there. That's the main thing. It's there. It can be accessed. The more you try to bear down on it, it doesn't come like that. It comes from just being open to what is, and what is always helpful to you because life wants to help you. And that is when you keep yourself in an environment of okayness. And I do this by, I think 3 or 4 days a week, I must look at material like this, and spiritual material. I read in areas like this. So that is always, my mind is always becoming enthused with this type of stuff. So much so that I can go out into the world and arguments can happen and bad things can happen, but my background, my backstop is always there. It's always there. It's like when you watch a violent movie, and most of the stuff you put on the telly now, a series I put on, a films, they're drama, action, and within the first 10 minutes there's about half a dozen people are shot or stabbed or something like that. But it's not real. And that's the secret to it, is that it isn't real. The real world is helpful. The world that we often see is not helpful, but that is not the real world. That is the real world is within, and that is why we should not be affected by circumstances that present themselves to us, because it's how we interpret those circumstances. So I'll shut up blabbing on now and hope that helps you. Thank you for listening.